Get these 4 phrases out of your head if you truly want to prosper.
At the end of the 19th century, Andrew Carnegie was already among the richest men on earth. Yet he often said something that shocked everyone who knew him: that most people do not fail because they lack talent, money, or opportunity. They fail because of the sentences they repeat inside their own minds. Carnegie believed that thoughts are not neutral. They spread. They shape decisions. They create destinies. He called this mental contamination. Just as a virus can weaken the body, certain phrases can weaken an entire life. And after decades watching entrepreneurs, workers, investors, and leaders, Carnegie noticed that 4 phrases appeared again and again in the minds of those who never prospered. 4 phrases that seemed harmless. But inside, they destroyed ambition, focus, and courage. The first phrase was this: "I'm not good enough." Carnegie heard this from bright young people, hardworking professionals, and entrepreneurs full of ideas. They compared themselves. They doubted themselves. They felt smaller. Carnegie knew that this phrase does not describe reality. It creates reality. When a person believes they are not good enough, they start to act as if it were true. They do not ask. They do not take risks. They do not position themselves. They accept less than they deserve because they believe they deserve less. Carnegie said the world does not measure you by your potential. It measures you by how you present yourself. And those who present themselves as small receive small. The second phrase was even more dangerous. "This is not for me." That phrase seemed to protect people. They said it so they would not try, so they would not fail, so they would not expose themselves. But Carnegie saw something else. He saw an invisible wall. When you say "this is not for me," you decide before you even try that certain levels of success, wealth, or influence belong only to others. And the most dangerous part: your mind begins to reject opportunities before it even recognizes them. Carnegie said opportunities rarely knock with a sign that says "this is for you." They usually arrive disguised as challenges. Those who say "this is not for me" never enter the game. The third phrase was one of the most common: "I will try." To Carnegie, this phrase sounded positive, but it revealed internal weakness. Try means you already accept the possibility of failure. And when the mind accepts failure as an option, behavior adjusts to it. The person hesitates, delays, gives up at the first obstacle. Carnegie said those who prosper do not try. They decide. Decision creates movement. Trying creates excuses. The fourth phrase was the most contaminating of all: "I have no choice." Carnegie said this phrase turns adults into prisoners. When you believe you have no choice, you surrender control of your life. You blame the market, the economy, your family, the government, fate. But in truth, choices almost always exist. Some are hard. Some require sacrifice. Some hurt. But they exist. Carnegie said prosperity begins when you accept that every decision, even a small one, is a choice. He himself had made impossible choices: leaving Scotland, working in factories, investing without money, selling when everyone said to hold. None of it was comfortable, but all of it was a choice. Carnegie observed that those who live trapped in these 4 phrases end up creating a life that confirms exactly what they believe. "I'm not good enough." "This is not for me." "I will try." "I have no choice." The mind repeats. The body obeys. The destiny forms. That is why he said the mind contaminates. A single wrong phrase, repeated for years, can sabotage an entire career. He saw it in employees who never asked for a raise, in entrepreneurs who never scaled, in investors who never took risks, in people who never changed. All of them had something in common: a poisoned inner dialogue. Carnegie taught that the mind is like soil. If you plant doubt, you harvest fear. If you plant resignation, you harvest stagnation. If you plant decision, you harvest movement. He said prosperity does not begin in the bank. It begins in language. Change the phrases you repeat, and you change the path your life follows. He believed that those who learn to watch what they think begin to control what they build. Not through magic, but through consistency. Thought shapes action. Action shapes results. That is why Carnegie advised something simple and powerful. Remove contaminated phrases. I am not good enough becomes I am under construction. This is not for me becomes I will figure it out. I will try becomes I have decided. I have no choice becomes I choose. These changes seem small, but they are like turning the rudder of a ship. Over time, they completely change the destination. These small changes may look insignificant, but they are like adjusting the rudder of a massive ship. Over time, they completely change where you end up. Carnegie used to say that most people do not ruin their lives in one dramatic moment. They ruin them quietly, through small phrases repeated daily. Every time you say, I am not good enough, you train your mind to step back. Every time you say, this is not for me, you teach your brain to ignore opportunity. Every time you say, I will try, you give yourself permission to quit. Every time you say, I have no choice, you surrender your power. And slowly, without noticing, your world shrinks. Carnegie watched this happen in factories, in offices, in boardrooms, in families. People who once dreamed big began to speak small. And when language became small, action followed. He believed that the words you tolerate inside your head eventually become the walls of your life. You do not feel trapped because of the world. You feel trapped because of the sentences you keep repeating. That is why Carnegie was obsessed with mental discipline. He would often say that controlling your income begins with controlling your inner dialogue. When a person changes how they speak to themselves, their posture changes. Their decisions change. Their courage changes. And the world responds differently. He saw this in himself. The poor immigrant boy who arrived in America had no money, no education, and no connections. But he refused to repeat the same phrases of limitation that surrounded him. He did not say, I am too small. He did not say, this is not for me. He did not say, I will try. He did not say, I have no choice. He said, I will learn. I will move. I will decide. I will choose. And that inner language slowly built an outer empire. Carnegie believed that prosperity is not something you chase. It is something you become aligned with. When your thoughts, your words, and your actions point in the same direction, opportunity starts to notice you. That is why he insisted that mental contamination was the silent killer of potential. Not lack of intelligence, not lack of resources, but lack of internal clarity. If your mind is filled with doubt, the world reflects doubt. If your mind is filled with fear, the world offers obstacles. If your mind is filled with decision, the world opens doors. In the end, Carnegie did not believe that success was mysterious. He believed it was predictable. Predictable based on what you allow to live inside your head. And that is the final lesson behind those 4 phrases. You do not need more talent. You do not need more money. You do not need more luck. You need cleaner thoughts. Because the mind contaminates. But it can also heal. Everything depends on which sentences you choose to keep.